Hello and welcome to the Do the Best Work of Your Life video series. I'm Carissa, editor of HR Magazine, and this series is brought to you in partnership with the Access Group, which offers technology to help businesses work better and smarter. Throughout this 10-part series, we're exploring how artificial intelligence, AI, and other technology can help HR leaders focus on what matters most, people. Today's conversation is all about making a workforce management work for you. But it's only episode 5 in a 10-part series, so don't forget to go and watch all the other video episodes. Let's get into it. Right, so let's set the scene then. What does workforce management look like at the moment, and how does it vary for different businesses? Zoe, what are your clients saying?
Wow, yeah, it really varies depending on the size of business and the sector. Obviously, you've got some sectors that are really transient workforce, fast turnover, such as retail. You've got, I've worked with a Premiership football club, lucky enough to recently, and that was so interesting because they have various pockets of their business where they've got security, they've got retail, they've got lots of casual workers, and then they've got their office-based staff as well that need to cover like match days and things like that. So it's not your typical 9 till 5 work. Their social media's got to be 24/7 as well. So I think it's a real challenge to get workforce management right. To me, it's about having the right people, the right time in the right place. So you need to know their skills, you need to know their availability, you need to keep them engaged, you need to get them there, and you need to get them skilled and ready to work. And it's mind-boggling. Yeah.
I'm sure.
It's a challenge.
Absolutely, it sounds it. I mean, it sounds like very varied depending on the type of business that you have, really. But how are people managing that? What tools are people using?
I think a lot of our clients are now leaning towards workforce management platforms, whether they're standalone or they're actually part of their integrated HR platform. There's definitely benefits to having it all in one, because if your payroll's all integrated as well as your workforce management, things work a little bit more seamlessly, and it feels like it's the same user experience with the user interface and things as well. But there are still a lot of people on spreadsheets. But yeah, I think people are now waking up to the power and the efficiency and the accuracy and the fact that it can help retention and attraction if you've actually got a workforce management platform, and then one that's even more intelligent when you start bringing in AI or predictive analytics and feeding business information in that can really be powerful and actually a really strong commercial tool.
Absolutely, we'll get into more of that for sure. But Roger, I wanted to come to you about the challenges of these workforce management tools. Okay. What are the top challenges?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on where you're starting from. Yeah. So, as was just mentioned there, getting all the data in one spot is great for those people who have got the tools in place that have done that, and so therefore they can start tackling the next sort of big issue or the big challenge. For me, assuming you have your data in one spot, the big challenge for HR in the next 2 to 3 years is all around the productivity agenda. So how does an organisation help drive productivity of the workforce, and how can you use workforce management tools to be able to then sort of measure and optimise productivity? Because every organisation, large and small, is all seeking a productive workforce, whether that is through full-time employees, whether that is through your flexible workforce. So how does an organiser, how HR are really being forced into the agenda here around how do we help the business define and then measure productivity of the workforce? I would say that's the number one challenge for HR over the next few years.
Makes sense. Ollie, how can technology help us to meet these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a many-headed hydra, right? You've got for those, and you're exactly right. When it comes to that maturity life cycle, if you've got all of that products all in one place, you've got one platform, it's obviously a lot easier because you can pull your payroll information, you can understand the costs, you can understand the time and attendance, you can look at your future for. So of course that's the nirvana. If you've got everything all in one platform, then technology can support you by looking more predictively about the workforce you will need, and also making sure that you've got the right skills next month, next year. So you can start to do that really, really amazing stuff. But then when you come back more down to those spreadsheet examples, I think, again, it's one of those things of take that first step, right? What you'll find is by implementing any of the capabilities of a workforce scheduling tool, you start to break it off one piece at a time, optimize it slowly but surely, and with the use of AI and analytics, you can then find out what probably is the next step for you to optimize, to really make those cost savings, to make sure you're getting even better people with even better skills at exactly the right time for the right thing. But, you know, again, depending on where you're on that spectrum, because it is a really big spectrum, technology can support those who are super, super mature, all the way through to those who are just trying to move off of spreadsheets and look at how they can optimize.
I found clients that are right at the beginning of that journey. There's always going to be managers in the business or areas in the business where they can immediately see the benefits and the impact, and they'll be chomping at the bit to be your pilots and actually to try it out, and then to share that knowledge of how impactful that technology has been for them and how much easier it is, the user experience at the end as well. So I think with starting afresh, find people that are really going to benefit the most from it. Do that piece first. Tell everyone about it, have proper use cases, and more people will want it and they will get on board, because some people do like their spreadsheets and they're very resistant.
But measure outcomes.
Absolutely.
Because if you measure outcomes, then you speak to the senior sponsors and say, you know, guess what, by moving off of the spreadsheet,
we've saved.
Look at how much we've actually saved the business.
Or we've retained, or we've,
Absolutely. It's been interesting actually, because one of the, going back only a few years ago, it used to be that the maturity cycle of workforce management platforms was such that you almost had to take one step at a time to get there. Whereas I think what's happening now is the advent of experience platforms and the ability of AI to then pull the data out of disparate platforms means that you can start leapfrogging. And so your ability to be able to leapfrog into from a relatively immature state into a relatively mature and advanced state is happening far quicker now than it ever has been before, because of the use of the extraction.
Get started.
Absolutely.
Get started.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, does it make you excited about the future of HR with regards to workforce management in particular?
Absolutely, and I think we're in a. I mean, everyone will say we're in a brilliant space now, but we genuinely are, and I think it's all around. It's being able to make sense of data, and I think the HR profession has always grappled with huge quantities of data that they've never really been able to do a huge amount about, or we've never really been able to. We perhaps would look at payroll records, and actually it's only now really that organisations started looking at their employee base or their workforce base as skills rather than employee number and payroll number. And I think it's actually being able to identify and understand the skills base of an organisation then enables you to tackle the productivity agenda, it enables you to tackle the workforce planning properly. I think a lot of the time in the past, HR has been, when you start talking about workforce planning, it's always been sort of almost built on sand, because you're kind of trying to plan for the future without understanding what you've got now.
But to be fair to HR professionals, I think analytics have come on a long way, right?
Absolutely.
And I think I've said this before, but you used to have data analysts and real experts, data scientists, and you had to have someone who really understood analytics. Whereas now more and more there's offerings of out-of-the-box capabilities that just you start by hitting the ground running. You don't need to go through all of those enormous implementation cycles. So to your point, now is a golden era of being able to get that data out and, as you say, turn it into information, turn it into recommendation. And AI helps with that as well. This is what we're seeing as a trend. Here's what we would recommend. But I think there are other ways that AI is going to really accelerate that journey for a lot of customers now, to leapfrog if they haven't really embraced it at the moment.
Especially for the larger organisations, when you've got such vast quantities of data. I think actually drawing those insights out, they might be insights that you might not have found otherwise.
I'd argue, though, that at the same time, some of the smaller organisations, they would have been priced out of doing some of that analytics in the past.
Time poor.
Right? And time poor and money poor, right? Whereas now we've almost, again, democratised that capability through AI and analytics to allow, some really quite small companies to have some sophisticated analytics and AI-powered engines. So again, it's a golden era, I think, for across those to really make the leap.
I'd say that there is a slight flip side on it as well, which is for me, which is always the watch out, which is as more and more boards become aware of the data that they could be available with, there's an insatiable appetite for just data. So, and a lot of the time you will get data as being understand what you want to measure, understanding what the data is telling you.
The questions.
Exactly, because data can answer any question you want it to in many different ways, and actually it's understanding. It's understanding, sort of for the HR profession anyway, it's understanding what you want to measure and how you want to measure it, and then and understanding what data is available to enable you to start measuring that. And it's this sort of,
it's a fine balance.
It's the fine balance of, we've got data everywhere. How do we make sense of it, and how do we use it to drive business improvement?
Absolutely. So we've talked about the benefit for businesses and organisations with regards to technology and how that can impact workforce management. But what about the employee? What impact does that have? Ollie, kick us off on this.
Yeah, so I'm passionate about this one because I think it's the user experience. If you imagine that, that's the first experience you have with a company is, how they manage you as part of that workforce. And especially if you think about transient workforce or people who churn over jobs quite quickly, you don't want to learn brand new products from beginning to end. I need to learn a new payroll system. You don't want to have to learn all of this stuff. And increasingly, the younger generation just won't have it. It's got to be mobile. It's got to be quick. It's got to be simple. And with generative AI and being able to pretty much converse with the computer, you don't even need a front end to the workforce management system, because what you can do is you can chat to it. You can say, what shifts are available next Tuesday? And instead of having to go to a cell in a field in a product, you can say, it'll say, well, there's 3:30. Would you like me to book it for you? And you can say yes. So that everyone can converse. And generative AI is allowing you to turn big, nasty computing, massive algorithms into really simple conversation that's super beneficial for the end user, because they're not using software. They're just having a chat with their workforce management system. And I think that's the game changer, because you go from job to job to job, or you stay in one job and do different roles. You don't have to learn a whole set of new tools and a whole set of new ways of working. You can just chat.
It is, yeah, no, and actually it's about employee engagement in the platforms. So I think in the past, again, HR platforms have traditionally been not great. It's been clunky and clunky at best. And I think actually not actually asking the individual to go into the system is the game changer. Yeah. It's actually saying, I want to talk to the assistant, or I want to talk to, and just say what I want to get out of this, out of the platform, booking holiday, driving expenses, all of the things that happen as your day-to-day employee experience. That's the sort of thing that is changing it, because everyone is requiring a consumer-grade experience, and it's got to be easy, it's got to be simple, and it's got to be intuitive.
And 24/7.
Yes.
I think that's the other thing that people expect. Like, I want to be able to do something just before I go to bed at night and secure something or whatever. Like, you want to engage with it 24/7, and you want immediate responses as well. That's what's being demanded of platforms.
And are you finding that that's what staff are wanting more and more among your clients?
It can be generational as well, but yeah, I think a lot of people are used to dealing with that commercially when they're buying things, when they're doing things outside of work. Why should workplace be any different? Those levels of expectations have risen across all generations, I think, in terms of the level and speed and accessibility.
So what impact will that have on these workforce management tools, do you think? I mean, how is the current landscape going to impact what technology can do for us?
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it's linked slightly to your question there, but I think we've definitely have moved, but we're moving more rapidly now away from this era of search into recommendation. So I think that from an employee perspective, certainly the new generations coming into the workforce, they've grown up being told, they're being fed information rather than going to find it. So if it's not being fed to them, then they don't actually. It's the era of recommendation. So it comes back to your point around data, is actually using some of the wider data that sits within the organisation to recommend to individuals around what they could be doing, what they should be doing. Training, learning and development. Actually, someone that looked like you 3 years ago, you know what, they did this and this. You might want to think about that. It's that sort of thing, rather than it being a chore activity within HR. It becomes something that's the day-to-day recommendation of what they should be doing, which is the same as Spotify, same as YouTube. All your platforms that you tend to use in your personal life are all based on recommendation, and that's how the era is moving.
Yeah, and I think both from the organisation perspective, recommendation on the shape and nature of your future workforce is going to be easy to. If you've got the data that's sitting there and you've got AI on top of it and a bit of machine learning about predictive analytics, you can really shape the future direction of what does that workforce need to be. And I mean, this sounds like science fiction, but this is today. This is today. This is there today. Yeah. This is there. And then on the other side, you've got for the employee. again, I just think that it's a completely different world where you get out of it what you want, and you can speak normal language and get what you need when you need it, rather than having to, as I said, we spoke about it before, but you might have a question, you could get that question answered. You might want to do a task, you want to look for something. All of that, you don't have to go into any software at all. You just chat and you're getting all of that information, whether it's about your policy, whether it's about some training, whether it's about booking something. The end user experience has been absolutely catapulted by the use of AI.
And then looking at some of the analytics around that, I guess people that actually turn up for their shifts because they're getting the shifts they want and they're reminded about them, or that engagement level as well helps productivity and helps the bottom line as well.
It helps managers as well.
Yeah.
So when we've been moving again as part of the whole evolution of how HR is delivered in an organisation, you're moving from this sort of the HR business partner model into sort of much more around manager self-service and employee self-service. Actually, now that self-service is actually becoming much more guided as well. Yeah. So it's not just self-service for your administration tasks. Actually, managers are getting a lot more strategic guidance from the use. So you were saying around workforce composition, for example. Yeah. I've got a project coming up over here. I need to gear up for it. Actually, the technology can start guiding you around that in terms of, well, you've got this package of skills over here, those skills over here.
Can do that
and
connection.
And it can start connecting. Actually, arguably, in many cases, far more accurately than perhaps a generalist HR business partner would have been able to do if they were looking after a large population.
Only because you can't see the patterns. I mean,
yes.
You have to be across all of that data. AI will bring that to you and present it to you. But again, I always keep talking about it as it's a co-pilot, not a pilot. Yes. And what it will do is it'll show you the patterns that you couldn't see yourself, that will allow you to make better decisions about the shape of the workforce or how you manage your existing workforce that you couldn't see because you're drowning in the data. It will make sense of it for you, but you still need that person who can really take that on board and make that next step and make that next decision.
And make the strategic recommendations to board, but backed up by analytics and figures. Absolutely.
So it sounds like what we're saying is that it can help HR leaders become more strategic by giving them those insights, as you were saying, that they can't see themselves, but it will, rather than kind of make my job there are people watching this thinking, oh, this is gonna take my job. Is it?
It's just gonna let you do the things that actually humans are best at doing, the things that are more strategic, interesting. Like, I think it is about having an overall strategy around workforce planning. And actually, where are the human touches where it's going to make the most amount of difference? What are you freed up to do? If you can rely on the technology, you know people are getting paid correctly, you've got the right people in the right place at the right time, which is everybody's dream. What can you then bring that only a human can bring? And it will make it more interesting and value add, I think.
Yeah, for both employer and employee, I'm guessing.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's the key point for me is around using data to back up what often in the past has been intuition.
Yeah.
So if you look at other functions that are a finance function, for example, as a really good example, that's long relied on data to justify decisions that get made. And I think HR as a profession hasn't necessarily used as much data to back up strategic planning decisions. And I think now the impact of the data availability and accuracy of data will allow the profession to have a lot more impact strategically than it has in the past. I don't think it's going to replace.
It's an enabler.
It's an enabler
to
doing far more accurate HR planning.
Yeah, I would just say, if you want to do the best work of your life and look at what you're doing, I don't think anyone who's listening or watching would ever say, I love 100% of every task that I have to do. If you could automate some of that mundane stuff, if you could almost have an assistant to go and find that data for you and bring it back to you, you're just being a better, more productive version of you and getting to better outcomes faster. It's not replacing anyone, it's just making you supercharged.
It's turbocharging.
Turbocharged, yeah.
Absolutely. But what's the entry point then for people that are thinking, okay, they're listening to this, they're watching this, and they're thinking, great, this sounds marvelous, but where's my entry point into this? Any tips?
There's lots of information and case studies out there. I think lots of vendors have got case studies on their websites. Have a look at the technology, speak to providers, speak to your current providers as well. There might be modules that you're not utilising. But yeah, people will love to talk about the impact that workforce management can have on your business. If you understand what the challenges are for you and you can articulate that, speak to some vendors about it. They'd love to demonstrate and tell you the art of the possible. You might not be able to afford everything, and there might be a phased approach to it, but finding out what difference it could make, you soon see the benefit versus the investment that you need to make. And it's a no-brainer, especially with some of the complexities of the organisations we've worked with. Yeah.
How do those conversations work for you, Roger?
Yeah, I think it's for me. It's the place. It's understanding your starting point and being clearer on what you're trying to achieve. Because I think you can easily get swept up in the art of the possible, and actually being really, really clear, taking bite-sized chunks and actually mobilise in a way that you can understand, define, measure, and then move on to the next one. I think it's almost, don't try to eat it all at once. Just keep it simple and then start building it as you go along.
So I'll be a bit different. I'll say I think you can afford to dream a bit further, because the way in which AI and analytics have moved on in terms of the way that they're really out the box, super intuitive, it is your opportunity to leapfrog. So I would say look at what outcomes you want to deliver, and then and you can afford to take a bigger step this time than you would have done maybe 3 years ago. You know that you said let's do step by step by step, which I agree. But the first step can be quite a big one,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And I'd say get out there and see what's available, because I think you'd be amazed at what AI and analytics can bring to workforce management.
Fantastic. Well, I can't think of a better way to end this episode. Thank you so much for your contributions, panel. It's been a good one. Cheers.
Thank you.